Somebody to talk to back talk here.
Can I have your attention, please? I've guaranteed them that I don't need a microphone, and most that know me know that I don't. First of all, welcome. Glad you're here. This is an information night. It's not required, but certainly what we wanted to do to try to get the word out in advance of the town meeting. I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of how we got here and what it is that we're proposed. There will be plenty of opportunity to ask questions, and we will answer them to the best of our ability. For those of you who grew up here, the concept of a beach on Ossipee Lake is not something new. It's something that's been talked about for 30, 40, and 50 years. There have been different groups. There was a committee formed back in the 80s that tried unsuccessfully to get a beach. Myself, Harry Merrill, and some others tried desperately about 12 to 14 years ago to gain land access into Lone Pine Beach, and were unsuccessful. We have continued to look for a site that was suitable to guarantee public access to Ossipee Lake for Ossipee residents. It's not just about swimming. It's about public access to the lake. Right now, unless you have a boat, or unless somebody invites you, there is not public access to the lake, with a couple of exceptions. We do have a small strip of sand, which is adjacent to the channel at Constitution Park. It's posted no swimming because it's not safe to swim. Anybody that goes in a boat in Ossipee Lake knows there's very little distance between where the boat traffic is and where anybody would be in the water. We posted it no swimming. It has parking for 2 cars unless you're willing to walk a quarter of a mile back towards Constitution Park. We have an access at the end of Nichols Road, which is 20 feet wide, and I guess you could launch a boat there, but there's no place to park. And we have an access at the end of Ossipee Lake Road, which is maybe 15 feet wide. Again, you could launch a boat. There is no beach, and there's no place to park. We have been looking for a site on Ossipee Lake, and it's not just looking for any site. We decided early on that we preferred to have 300 feet of beach. 200 would be adequate, but most importantly is the issue of parking and access. Many of you who live around the lake know the last thing that anybody wants is to put a whole bunch of public traffic into the middle of a residential neighborhood. It doesn't work well. The parking is critical because there is absolutely zero control or zero way of knowing how many people are going to use it on a given day. As you all know, it's dictated predominantly by the weather. We've been looking for a site for some time, as I said, and about 3 years ago, I first approached the owners of Camp Sokokis because I believed that at some point that land would become for sale. They were not ready to sell, and that's fine. Simply asked, when you are ready, would you please let us know? Last fall, through a mutual acquaintance, we were told that they were ready. We went and had some preliminary meetings with them. We had hoped to have it ready so that we could have voted on it at last town meeting. They weren't ready. The appraisal hadn't been done. Long story short, we weren't ready for town meeting. Last year, as part of our budget process, we did raise and establish a capital reserve account with the stated purpose of obtaining a beach on Ossipee Lake. We put $25,000 in it. It was passed unanimously by the Board of Selectmen, unanimously by the Budget Committee, and unanimously by town meeting. We told them at town meeting, I told them at town meeting, that we were working on a site and that money would be used in preparation, deed research, etc., and we would be back, hopefully, with a proposal for a beach. And here we are. I should have mentioned to start with, we are being taped by Government Oversight. Anybody can watch this at GovernmentOversite.com, is that correct, Ed?
That's correct.
It's also on Facebook, so anybody who wants to recap the meeting or watch it in its entirety can do so. This spring, we finished up negotiations for the purchase of Camp Sokokis. The asking price was $1.2 million. The town had it assessed already at $1.26, so it'd be pretty hard to say it wasn't worth it if that's what we were already assessing it at. We, during the course of the negotiation, negotiated for the purchase of the entire lot. Everything that's outlined in red on this picture, you can see it, which includes Gretchen Road, the lots here, and then the 2 lots, actually 4 lots, that abut the lake. Comprises a total of about 52 acres of land. Most important part to us is the 200 feet of beach frontage and about 450 feet of depth between Hodgson Shore Road and the lake. When Camp Sokokis became available, as a board we discussed it, and we believed, and did believe, that it was worth, and I still believe it was worth looking at the potential of generating revenue by keeping a portion of the campground to fund the beach. That was never a prerequisite for us on purchasing it, but I think that we would have not been doing our due diligence if we didn't look at that as a potential revenue to offset the cost. That very quickly became what I would call muddy water. It raised more questions than it did answers, and from the get-go, it was never our desire to be in the campground business or in the boat dock business. We were seeking a beach. What makes Camp Sokokis so desirable? Flat out, what makes it so desirable is they have direct access from Route 16B. They have direct access from Route 16B directly to the beach. You don't have to disrupt any neighborhood. By putting the parking on the non-water side of Hodgson Shore Road, you minimize the traffic impact on Hodgson Shore, which is windy and narrow, and there is more than enough land that is already cleared, already flat, to establish all of the parking that's needed. To back up a little bit, and much hay has been made about this free beach that we were offering. We had already negotiated for the purchase of the entire parcel and agreed. After the agreement was announced by the owner to the campground, there was a furor. And some of you are here and probably could speak to that if you chose to. They wanted to renegotiate. And instead of getting any of this, they were going to donate this strip right here. Very generous, and I told them that. I then asked that they abide by our agreement, which they ultimately did. What is the problem with this? It has 90 feet of beach frontage, which I would argue is not adequate. More importantly, if you clear cut this, which is now timbered, mostly timbered, you would have room for maybe 10 to 12 cars. The beach is separated by wetland. And by wetland, I don't mean a few ferns. It is standing water wetland. Probably standing a little deeper today than what it was yesterday. The problem, again, with this is access and parking. If you already have a dozen cars there, what happens when the next dozen shows up? And what happens when the next dozen show up? You are going to create constant conflict. You would put all of the traffic down Hodgson Shore Road, a road which is, by everybody would agree, is very narrow and winding. You put all the traffic down there, and then when they get down there and the parking lot's already full, now what? It simply is not an adequate site for a town beach. It isn't big enough, and most importantly, it does not have enough parking. That's why we asked for them to abide by the agreement which we had already made for the purchase of all of it. Because again, this and the ability to put in parking is what makes this site desirable from the get-go. I want to touch briefly on the town finances. Some of the things that are being said, I think, are disingenuous. when they talk about another tax increase. If you look at the town portion of your tax bill, not your overall tax bill, the town portion, it has gone down 3 years in a row for a total of about 34 cents a thousand. That hasn't been done in a vacuum. We have continued to do major projects. Last year we completed a $464,000 addition to the highway garage, and your town tax rate still went down 4 cents a thousand. We're waiting for the 2017 rate still to be set. It's going to be down again between another 15 and 18 cents per thousand. This is not rocket science. Budgeting with the town is actually quite easy. It's very much like you run your own households, except that the numbers are a whole lot bigger. If you control growth at a slower rate than what your revenues are going up, then the tax rate goes down. We have successfully been doing that, and there's no reason whatsoever to believe that that isn't going to continue. I hate and despise when it gets put into a me versus or an us versus you issue, because all three of us are taxpayers. Does anybody honestly believe that we go into this wanting to raise our own taxes? We are full-time, year-round homeowners. We have worked very hard, and I say we because, Joe, where are you? Chairman of the Budget Committee sitting over there. It starts with the department heads, goes to the selectmen, goes to the Budget Committee, goes through town meeting. We have worked very, very hard over the last few years through controlling spending to lower the town tax rate while still accomplishing some seriously major projects. There's no reason to believe that that can't continue. So when people talk about there being a tax increase, they don't know what they're talking about, period. And I can prove it, and I can do the math with actual figures. We talked about purchasing land. Now what? Big thing raised. How much work needs to be done to Gretchen Road in order to make it adequate? Public Works Director, I don't think is here tonight, but he has looked at it. The highway foreman has looked at it, and the quick answer is very little to nothing. With our equipment and the grader, they can go back in, put a crown on the road. It needs exceedingly little and can be accomplished within our current budget. By choosing to eventually eliminate the campground, you already have a bathroom facility, which is already there. If we do end up putting in additional porta potties, folks, we have a $5.2 million operating budget. I'm quite sure we can afford a few porta potties within the current budget. What about maintenance? We have a full-time employee who is a maintenance employee who does the mowing of the parks, mowing of the ball fields. He's responsible for cleaning up down at Duncan Lake. And guess what? If this is purchased, a part of his duties will be going down there daily and picking up any trash. It'll be a carry in, carry out. We all know that doesn't always work. What about a lifeguard? Peter Waugh, who's here, wrote a very good letter to the editor a couple of weeks ago and pointed out some very good facts. Lifeguards, one, are almost impossible to find. The days of having college kids available to that want to be lifeguards in the summer are coming to an end. They're exceedingly hard to find. The town actually has more liability if we have a lifeguard there than if we don't have a lifeguard. If we have a lifeguard on duty, then the person has a certain expectation of a level of service, and if your lifeguard fails to provide that level of service, then you're liable. Without a lifeguard, by simply posting it, no lifeguard on duty, then our liability is actually less. Our town administrator has met with our insurance carrier. We have a blanket liability insurance policy, which you can quite imagine is quite large. We already have a town beach on Duncan Lake, and we have been told there will be no increase in the town's liability and coverage to have a second beach. The liability is the same, just split in two locations. So the long story short is, outside of purchasing this, there is virtually nothing that has to be done. Now, down the road, will they choose to add on the conceptual drawings, and that's all these are. There's been a pavilion added here, or a volleyball court. Those are just to simply suggest that there are some possibilities there. If the townspeople choose to do that at a later date, then they certainly have to pay for it. Every year at town meeting, we have a standing warrant article that we raise every year, where we raise $10,000 to $15,000 for improvement to recreational facilities. Sometimes it's used on ball fields, sometimes it's used on the tennis courts. So again, within what we've been doing, there is no reason why we can't do things here the same way we do at other recreational facilities. The parking that needs to be established would be done and could be done, would be done by our highway department. Every year, again, the town owns a lot of property. When you talk about Town Hall and the Freight House and the water pumping station at Pine River, there are a lot of town properties, Constitution Park, where they do work on a regular basis to improve those facilities. No different here. So the parking would be established using our own highway department. We already budget for them, we already pay them, no additional cost. In a nutshell, that's why we've looked at this as such a desirable location. The town, right now, on the financial side, the town of Ossipee is carrying 0 long-term debt. Find another town around that can say that. There are towns around us that are swimming in debt. We have none. We have repaired and replaced every single red-listed bridge the town of Ossipee has. Look around. There are towns that are closing roads because they have bridges that are unsafe. Even though all of our bridges are done, we continue to put money into a capital reserve account for the next bridge, because there will be one as they age. But when they do come, the money will already be sitting there to pay for it. In addition to our budget, we're required to run recommended by DRA that we run a 5 to a 7.5% budget surplus, or an unassigned fund balance. In our $5.2 million operating budget, then that would put us in the $500,000 to $750,000 that they would recommend that you run as a surplus. The town of Ossipee surplus currently stands at $1.147 million. That will increase again at the end of this budget year, because unexpended monies out of our operating budget is what goes into the unassigned fund balance. So for the purposes of this purchase, we're proposing to take $200,000 out of the unassigned fund balance and then to bond $1 million. By bonding $1 million for 30 years, it comes out to about $85,000 a year, which, if everything was considered equal, when you divide that payment into the town's evaluation, which is how you get a tax rate, it represents 15 cents per thousand. That's the math that Harry Merrill was putting in his article. That assumes 0 growth. That assumes that your revenues don't go up a penny, which never happens. This year alone, we've been notified by DRA that the town's assessed value went up $7 million between 2016 and 2017. Every time somebody builds a new house or adds on or a new business location, all of that raises your revenue, which spreads out the amount of taxes you have to raise. So that 15 cents a thousand assumes the absolute worst case scenario is that the revenues do not increase a penny. It doesn't happen. Given what we've been able to do, not just by what I'm telling you, look at what we've been able to do. Pointing to the highway garage again, $484,000, we paid cash for it and still were able to lower the tax rate 4 cents. I believe, as sure as I'm standing here, that the acquisition of this beach will not increase your tax rate for the town of Ossipee, not 1 cent. That it can be done under our current budget, and with the increase in revenue, that we can do so without increasing the tax rate. Again, don't judge me by what I say, judge me by what we've done. And now, you want to add something? Anything? Sam, Bob?
I agree.
I should have introduced them. This is Sam Martin, Bob Freeman. We will open it up to questions. We will gladly answer anything we can. We ask that you be clear, and ask, when you stand up, just tell us who you are and where you're from. Questions? Sir.
Bernie Devon, Orchard Street Road. How are you going to replace the tax revenue now that the town gets from the campground?
Okay.
And what is that figure, and how much do the campers pay in taxes combined?
Okay, let me answer. The current owners of the campground pay $26,000 a year in taxes. The campers pay an average of $150 a piece per year in taxes. Of that 150, about $40 comes to the town of Ossipee. I would hope you would understand that that $40 is probably not going to be missed tremendously. The $26,000 figure absolutely has to be included in the overall. We are taking, if you purchase this, $1.2 million in taxable property off the rolls. Forever, presumably. So yes, you have to incorporate that in your figures, but as I said, we're taking 1.2 million off, we've added 7 million between 2016 and 2017 alone.
And are you gonna be charging people to come down that beach?
No,
It's gonna be a free beach.
correct. Our proposal is, it's a good question, our proposal is that the access to the beach would be controlled in the same way as the transfer station, some people call them a dumpster. If you are an Ossipee taxpayer, then you would have access to that property by virtue of having that decal. It will only be open to Ossipee taxpayers and their guests. It's not our desire to supply a public beach for anybody else. This is about Ossipee people having access to it.
And now you said you're gonna have the highway people, the guy coming down cutting the grass, he's gonna be, all these 3 or 4 people are gonna be running all around Ossipee, taking care of the other jobs, plus this place. Who's gonna be down there constantly in the course of the day, minding the beach?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody. No different than any other
So
town.
they're just gonna pull up and have free wheel in the whole beach. The people come down there. No responsibility down there.
I'm missing your
No, I'm
point.
just asking, are you gonna have people down here kind of keep this on the grounds at all times? in case
No.
Something
No.
happens to somebody down here, or?
It's no different than any other public property. I mean, for the most part, you go into White Lake State Park, there's nobody there. I mean, I suppose you could go find a campground manager, but for the most part, no. We would have somebody on a regular basis coming in for maintenance. You would be on the patrol list, certainly for the police department to swing through. There's gonna be some checking to have some compliance, or else those dump stickers aren't gonna mean anything. So the quick answer is there will be people coming in and out, but not somebody stationed there all day, every day.
There's a guarantee about Gretchen Road being the only entrance into that. How are you gonna really do that?
Well, quite simply, because if you don't have, the only thing we've got right now, again, on the conceptual drawing, is we do think that we need to try to make some sort of a handicap parking as close as we can. So again, conceptually, we put 3 handicap spots in on this side. There will be signage out at the beginning of Hodgson Shore Road notifying people that there is no beach parking available on that route. By continuing to maintain the gate at Gretchen Road, which is there now. If you keep that gate there, then that will force them to come in Gretchen Road in order to be able to access parking. Then they simply walk across the street to the beach. There'll be no parking otherwise.
How do the handicap people get to those spots?
Okay? Please stand up and
Oh, I'm sorry, I just, how did the handicap, the 3 handicap people get to those 3
yeah.
spots?
Again, conceptually, right now, my guess would be that we would do something with it, if we proceed with trying to have some handicapped access here. I'm not convinced it needs to be there. We may be able to get some places in very close, and a little bit closer here, right next to Hodgson Shore Road. But if it were down here, then the signage out there would indicate that there's only handicap spaces available in this direction. Jim?
Jim Fitzpatrick, but I think it'd be good to clarify the 26,000.
Yeah,
26,000 is the total.
correct,
Town portion of that
Correct.
26,000 is
Absolutely.
only about 8,000.
correct.
So-
You're absolutely right.
So the bottom line
Yeah.
is, the town doesn't lose 26,000.
We do not.
You lose 7
Correct.
or 8.
And I tried to point that out on the campus side, but I should have raised it, you're absolutely right. The $26,000 that is currently paid is their total tax bill. Now, part of that goes to the county, part of that goes to the state, part of that goes to state education. The portion that comes to the town of Ossipee of that $26,000 is about $8,000.
Rick, when people stand, can you please get their name? She-
You did.
I didn't know her. And she
Okay,
said-
I'm sorry, could have your name, please?
Leah?
Leah?
No. Where are you from? Somersworth?
Okay. Somebody else? Joe?
Joe Deegan. I'm from, I live at Center Ossipee. The question I have for you is more more about the money in the bonds, if you don't mind me asking. Is the 15 cents for the 85,000 a year, 15 per thousand?
Yes.
Because over 30 years, we'd be paying in 2.2 something million.
Correct.
What would it be worth if we took the hit once and just got it done? Because 1.2 on top of this 5 or whatever million we're doing now really is that big of a hit.
It isn't accepted, Joe, I understand what you're saying. His question is, why not do it in 1 year? We looked at this, and I'll be honest with you, we hemmed and hawed, because to do it in 1 year, you only need a simple majority. Doing it the way we're doing it, you require 2/3. The problem with doing it in 1 year, if you took, the surplus could be taken down to $700,000 without making us too nervous. I would not go much more than that. The idea behind that surplus, and some people refer to it as a rainy day fund, it also should be known as an emergency fund. Some of you remember we had a really bad forest fire up in the Ossipee Mountains that consumed about $300,000 in a pretty short order. Thankfully, that was cost shared with the state, but things like that could happen. Not that I hope they happen, but you could have a pretty significant emergency that could require you to spend $400,000 or $500,000. That's what that surplus is for. So if we drew it down to $700,000 as an example, to raise the remainder would jump the town tax rate by probably 50 cents a thousand, but only for 1 year. Most of us, that might not be a huge deal. You'd say, you know something, it's 1 year. But then we have to try to factor in the number of elderly people that we have in town, etc., where that would be a big deal, in fairness. It could be a very big deal. At the end of the day, while I was tempted, I truly believe that what we have proposed is the most responsible and safe way. I get what you're saying. I'm all about saving interest. That's why we didn't bond the highway department. That's why when we need a new highway truck, we don't borrow money for them, we pay cash for them. We usually do that out of the surplus. Just, this is enough at $1.2 million. I didn't see a good, I don't see a good way of doing that without putting the town in jeopardy financially, and I don't think it would be a wise decision. As much as I understand what you're saying. Jim.
I think another point on that is the municipal borrowing rate today is at a historic low.
It is.
So, I mean, for most of us, if we could get
We
home mortgage rates
yeah.
that low, we'd do it.
The 85,000, we have also calculated on what we believe to be a worst-case scenario, which is 3.85%. The bonds, it's done through the municipal bond bank. They actually will put that bond out to bid, and it is entirely likely that we will get a much better interest rate than that. But in the interest of fairness, we've told you what we believe the maximum would be, and I mean, since a homeowner can borrow I'm at that rate, I'm quite sure the town can borrow at that rate. Anybody else? Sir?
Center Ossipee resident. You've said that there would be unsupervised, and I understand that part because, yeah, it's a town beach. There needs to be no attendant. Is there a plan though? Okay, first of all, are they going to be open and closing hours?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a plan for keeping, say, undesirable activity from taking place after hours?
It's a very good question. We currently have a beach ordinance which controls and sets the hours of operation, the policies, and all of that at our Duncan Lake Beach. And that will absolutely be extended open. The beach will not be open at night. There'll be no pets, no dogs, there'll be no alcohol, all of the normal things that you would expect to see in any town beach. Those rules will all be in place. The closing hours and to keep undesirables and all of, you know, parties or whatever, that's where it comes upon the police department to make regular patrols of that and make sure that it's not occurring. Obviously, we will work with our neighbors down there, and if there is a problem, they call and it'll be taken care of. But it would have the same rules that you would expect on any town beach. Jim?
So, are there any plans to sell the Duncan Lake property?
There are not any plans to sell the Duncan Lake property. The Duncan Lake Town Beach, for those of you who have been there, it's a decent small beach, about 100 feet. A little bit of a challenging walkway from the parking area down to the beach. But there are no plans whatsoever at this juncture to sell the town beach that's at Duncan Lake.
Why not?
It certainly is something that can be done. You know, there's a lot of options, even when it comes to this parcel of land. I should also mention to you that it is our intention, and I hope prior to town meeting to be able to announce who is going to be on that committee. Our plan is, if should this pass, that we will have a very decent committee of 7 to 9 people who will come back to us with some recommendations on how to best utilize that land. I've already made it known that I think Harry Merrow should be the chairman of that. He's worked for a lot of years trying to have this happen. The rec director would be on the committee. I've spoken to the chairman of the budget committee and suggested that he have a person on there. Jim Rhines, who most people know, has more planning experience and especially wetland and shoreline protection experience, has agreed to serve on that committee. And then have some people come back with some recommendations. 2 things. 1, I would love to get out of it and get the politics out of it. You know, I've been branded, and that's okay. I got broad shoulders, and after 28 years of as a police officer, I was just getting used to everybody waving at me using all 5 fingers. But I want out of it. What this board has done, and all this board has done, is secured an opportunity for the townspeople to vote on this. If it's passed, I'd like to get the politics out of it, get a really good committee of some people who can come back with some recommendations on how to best utilize that. As I said, we've got some conceptual things on here with a pavilion or a volleyball court, but there's any number of possibilities that could be seen down there.
Playground?
We make, you know, a playground for the kids and a picnic area. I mean, there's any number of things that could be done down there. The point being, 1, my hope is that committee will come back, and I trust that they will come back with some good recommendations. But 2, before a penny gets spent, you as townspeople have to approve it. This board is not empowered to spend 1 single penny on anything that's not appropriated by the voters. So anything that's done in the future, the voters will have a say in whether or not they do that. We can't spend it unless you raise it. Joe?
A lot of people know me, I'm Joe Goss, West Ossipee, Chairman of the Budget Committee. Richard and I have been on odds a lot of times on town budget. Everybody that knows me also knows that I do not like to raise any money that is unnecessary. This is a golden opportunity for the town to get a nice beach on the lake for a reasonable price. The way I see it, if you don't go forward with this opportunity, in the future, you're going to have to buy up 3 to 4 campsites along that lake someplace to have a beach in an area of that size. Physical and financial responsibility shows that this is your golden opportunity to get something that all the townspeople can use and have wanted over the years. I think it would be foolish for people not to go forward with this. You know, I support it 100%. Usually Richard and I are absolutely opposite sides of the tables.
No. One of the other things, thank you. One of the other things was pointed out, that Daniel was getting, I think Danny's here someplace. There he is. It was actually pointed out at one of the selectmen's meetings, and I thought it was an interesting point, one that I had honestly thought about, because I don't think it would ever come to pass. But what's the worst case scenario? Town buys this beach, does it for 3 or 4 years, decides it was a disaster. What have they lost? 4 or 5 years, you can sell it for 1.5. Denny pointed out that it's an investment, and it truly is. Is it worth 1.2? Yes, it is. You simply have to decide, are you willing to pony up for that public access? As I said from the beginning, this is not just about a place to swim. This is about public access to that lake. It's about having a place where you can go down and sit and read a book and enjoy the scenery. It's a place where you can park a car and launch a bob house and go ice fishing. The owners are here. They've been very gracious over the years and have allowed that access in there for fishing derbies in the wintertime. This will guarantee that access forever. It's a place where you can park and watch your snow machines go out on the lake. It's about public access to Ossipee Lake. This isn't Lake Freedom we're talking about. It's not Lake Etna. It's a lake that was named after this town. And to me, that it's 2017, and we're debating right now whether or not people have the ability to go there and swim without being invited, boggles my mind. I primed the budget committee last year when we started talking about this beach. And I said, you know, we all look at the Selectmen from 50 years ago and say, you know, those idiots could have had a beach for $100,000. And they all laughed. And I said, I'm glad you think that's funny. Because for 100 years, 50 years from now, they're going to be looking at us, going, you know, those morons could have had a beach for $1 million. It's all relative. Waterfront property always has been and always will be expensive. It's not getting any cheaper. I can tell you that some of us have been looking for this site for 15 years. Somebody show me another site on Ossipee Lake that would give what this site gives, and I'll gladly look at it. I can tell you they're not out there. The only other property that came close to this was Camp Sokokis a few years ago. That's been condoized, and it went for a whole lot more money than what the town could afford at that time. There is nothing left. Joe's point, and I've said this, if this does not pass, the only hope in the future of the town of Ossipee having a public beach on Ossipee Lake will be to be able to go in the middle of a neighborhood, buy 2 or 3 or 4 houses, and tear them down. You tell me when that's likely to happen. That 3 or 4 houses would be for sale at the same time, the same location. If you do not do this, I think it is the death knell to the concept of having a beach on Ossipee Lake, because I don't know of another site available or that's likely to even become available. Sir.
Frank Bolton, I live in Center Ossipee, and it sounds good for the beach.
Can you just speak on this a little bit, sir?
It sounds good for the townspeople to have a beach on the lake. One concern I have is, what about boating traffic? Is there plans to put in like a boat launch and docks or moorings?
I'm glad you asked that.
I don't like boats in proximity of like little kids swimming, so.
I'm glad you asked that. Because one of the other charges that's been leveled at me is because now I'm a boat salesman at Ward's Boat Shop, that somehow I'm in cahoots with them. I don't know how that figures when I've been working on a town beach for 15 years and I've only been selling boats for 2. But anybody that knows this portion of the lake, it's exceedingly shallow. There is absolutely 0 plans to ever have any boat launch on that property whatsoever. In addition, because the selectmen have decided to take the tack of eliminating the campground, we will be eliminating all of the boat docks. All of them. You're right. We started to get clouded by the thoughts of trying to keep some boat docks, keep some campsites to try to help offset. The only way we could safely keep the boat docks is to be able to push them farther offshore than what the state will allow, because boats and swimmers do not mix. By eliminating the boat docks, it will allow the full 200 feet of the beach and water to be utilized for swimming. So we have no plans whatsoever to have, and to actually eliminate what boat traffic is already there, and we will not be adding to it. Sir?
Is that going to be voided off the beach?
It would. We put in a swim line, usually, you know, out to a depth, a certain depth, but there'll be a swim line.
And going back to the parking again, how many spots are going to be open on the other side of Gretchen?
Right now, we're proposing 40 parking sites, which again, this is conceptual, placed in on this side and this side. May be able to do more in here with some handicap spots, but I'm not positive. But we're proposing to have 40 parking spots.
There's a lot of land on that side.
There is.
I'm still a little cloudy on the campground.
Yeah.
Is that gonna stay or is it gonna go?
What we have proposed is when we did this, again, we looked at potentially keeping some of the campground generating revenue. We have now decided that we are going to take the course of eliminating the campground in its entirety. Much hay has been making. We have a purchase and sales agreement which allows some of the campus to stay, and it does. But the fact of the matter is, this is a problem without need of a solution. Because the moment we decide to eliminate all of the boat docks, some of the campus are here, I even the owners believe that there will be a mass exodus because a great part of why they're there is for the ability to have a boat. Once that is eliminated, the vast majority of the campers, I believe, will seek alternatives, which they have. I want to touch briefly on this. I have no animosity in my heart whatsoever against anybody at Camp Sokokis, at all. I understand why you're upset. I understand why you want it to continue the way it has. I don't fault you for that. If I were a camper down there, I would feel the same way. What I have said to some of you at these meetings is, I understand, however, they have alternatives. There are other seasonal campsites around the lake which are available, whether it's Westwood Shores or English's Campground or the Bluffs. There are other options for them. There are no other options for the townspeople. And when I balance 45 campsites versus 4,500 residents, the scale tilts pretty quick.
A lot of people walk in on mass, I'm a Camp Sokokis camper. You're assuming that there'd be a mass exodus. What gives you, what detail do you have? Who do you talk to at the campground, besides your selectmen, who say we're gonna leave?
Actually, it was the owners who believed that there would be an access to this if there were no boats. But the fact of the matter is, once we own it, we're still able to move the campers. We would be moving the ones from the lakeside almost immediately. If this purchase is approved, there will be a town beach come swim season.
Okay, I got another question.
Sure.
You're saying that we only give about $40 of our taxes a year towards the public or towards the town of Ossipee. Have you done a cost analysis of what losing 45 families would be for the town as far as, stores and restaurants, golf courses, and the benefits we do with the golf course? Have you done anything like that?
We have not. And I understand, and I think that is a valid, nobody, again, I'm not saying that Camp Sokokis has been a valuable asset to this area. I'm not saying that. The fact of the matter is, you're right. They do contribute in many ways to the stores and the golf course. I do presume you probably won't stop golfing if Camp Sokokis isn't there. Some of you will probably stay maybe at Westwood Shores. So there is no way of really doing the cost analysis of how much would be lost to the local economy, or how much would be brought into that same area by people who would not normally be traveling there now to use our town beach.
Well, you said the town beach is going to leave for all.
It is, but that doesn't, so what I'm saying to you is you take Value Land as a for instance. They have certainly, I would expect, they're going to lose some revenue from you folks not being there. And I think that their revenue will also go up by the number of people who are going to be shopping there that weren't shopping there before because of the beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deborah Wade, Hampstead, New Hampshire, but I own property in Ossipee. So if, as it says in the purchase and sale, that the campground is supposed to somehow remain for 3 years, and as you just said, your preferred option is to remove the campers and the
Right.
campsites. Only around half of the campers had boats, so the other half don't really care about the boats. And if some of them choose to stay, as it is outlined in the purchase and sale for 3 years, what's the plan for those campers?
The plan is that we will accommodate those that we are allowed to accommodate. There is nothing in the purchase and sales that says that all of the campers have to stay in one place. There's nothing in the purchase and sales, again, nor would there be with anybody else buying it, that says that you can't move campers from one location to another. The fact of the matter is, it will be a dramatic change. If the town had chosen to stay in the campground business long-term, then certainly a number of accommodations would have had to be made for the campers in regards to the beach. You all know where this is. The fact of the matter is, this campground is located in a swamp. And if it were not for the access to the lake, or the access to a boat, I find it very difficult to believe that most people would choose to camp there. I can't imagine what it is in mosquito season. For those who do stay, we will continue to accommodate them in accordance by the purchase and sales agreement. The purchase and sales agreement was intended primarily, and this was at, believe it or not, our suggestion, that we not go up on the rents for 3 years. We want to transition this nicely. It's not our desire to be bad neighbors or to be bad hosts. But our goal from the get-go was never to be in the campground business. And it was not to be in the boat dock business. It was to acquire the public access for Ossipee residents.
I have a question. So if people stay, and the beach is for Ossipee residents, and they're residents of another state, how does that work?
If they are Ossipee taxpayers, which the vast majority of them are, then they would have access to the beach like everybody else. When I talked about accommodations, and one of the reasons that, again, I think this is a problem without need of a solution, it would dramatically be different than what it is currently. They would have to abide by the same rules as everybody else, which means the beach would not be open for them after dark any more than it would be to anybody else. It means there would be no alcohol on the beach, there would be no pets on the beach. So it would be a dramatic shift from what they are normally used to. And that's why I believe, quite frankly, that most people would choose not to stay there. Not because we're trying to drive you out, but the simple fact of the matter of where you end up. I don't imagine that most of you would want to stay. Roy.
I'm Roy Barron, Ossipee resident. One quick question, a little comment first. I'm in favor of this, but I'm kind of curious whether or not there's going to be a lifeguard on duty down.
Yeah. I covered that real briefly a little bit ago. We have no intention at this point of having a lifeguard on duty for the obvious reasons. One, they're very difficult to find, and two, your liability is higher with it there than with not. I do fully expect that we would do something with swim program with kids through the rec department in the course of the summer. But right now, our rec department transports our kids to White Lake in order to have a beach. So, sure.
Jonathan remembers from Indian Mountain Golf Course. There's a gentleman back here that asked about the, was there any thought of an impact study for businesses in the area that this campground does bring quite a bit of income in? And I think it would definitely be prudent to look into that. You know, and I'm saying this as a business owner. I'm not swayed either way on this.
Yeah.
I just need like more information on what the long-term effects of losing a pretty significant part of our business.
And again, I'm not trying to minimize that, but I think we need to keep it in perspective. It is 45 campsites. Will there be an economic down because will them not spending their money somewhere else? Sure, absolutely. I don't know how you exactly quantify that.
And I feel the same way with us. You know, we give quite a bit to the community here in our business, and it'd be like us saying, we're going to close the golf course and we're going to put up a development, and everybody looks at us and goes, you know, where do we go now? I think it's a huge impact to the area.
Sure, and listen, but the fact of the matter is that change brings that stuff. I mean, if you talk to the people who are in Westwood Shores who went from paying $3,000 who are going to have to be paying $6,000, that happens. You know, I mean, change is going to happen. This property was being sold. We're in a position to buy it. If we don't buy it, somebody else is going to. Sir?
Harry, do you have any plans on keeping those parking lots plowed in the winter, access for snowmobiles and ATVs? And how will you control that activity? And also, are you going to charge Ossipee residents for that beach sticker?
Yeah, I've answered that before, but I'll answer it again. We have absolutely no intention to charge Ossipee residents to use that beach. Yes, we do in fact plan on continuing to plow an area and a parking area so that the lake can be used year-round. That would include enough room for people, again, Ossipee residents, with that sticker, for them to be able to park and launch a snow machine. But they will be not open to others for that purpose.
How will you control it?
You control it with we control it the same way that you do with the parking permits. It would be patrolled by the police department, and if a person is there who does not have the permit, then they would be subjected to a fine.
So they're going to have stickers on snowmobiles and ATVs?
No, on vehicles parked there. The only issue we're concerned about is the parking.
Snowmobiles and ATVs could come and go as well.
Well, they could now from the lake, sure.
So how often is the police going to be checking this area in the course of the day?
I
mean, they're going to be making a routine, getting out of the car,
yeah,
walking down to the beach and taking a look at see what's going on, or
the quick
riding down the road and going back out here?
The quick answer is as often as is necessary. Certain times of year, obviously, there's hardly anybody there. Wouldn't it? The times when it's busy, and in the evenings, particularly in the summertime when we anticipate would be the potential for the most problem. I do not have a number other than to say as is necessary. If there were a problem developing down there, then they would be down there as often as is necessary. I don't anticipate that. With the neighbors' help and letting us know if something's going on, then it can be addressed. Somebody over here started that. Sir?
How about Ossipee taxpayers who are non-residents? Do they get to use it?
Yes. If they are in Ossipee, the same way that you have the ability to use the transfer station, if you are entitled and qualified for a parking, for a dump sticker, for lack of a better term, then you would absolutely be able to use the beach. Somebody over there.
Bolton Millette, Bluffs, Ossipee. Would the dump sticker be enough to basically give you access to the beach? And another question is, would the Economic Commission, I don't know what the name of it would be the appropriate people to take a look at the impact of all of this?
We have an economic development committee. I'm not sure if that's something that could be necessary. They're more designed to be looking for businesses to locate. I don't know. As far as the dumpster is exactly how we intend to control access to make it only open to us together.
The other two concerns that I have is essentially maintenance. As you probably know, we have a fairly large beach where we are, and it takes a lot to maintain it. I'd like to see a budget item that basically says that that's what we're gonna take and put in as far as maintaining it. And as far as my support, I think it's a very worthwhile investment to invest in our town.
Thank you.
I might not need the beach, but guess what? People moving into town is what helps us.
I've said many times, and I'll say it again, you will never, ever see my fat behind down there laid on the sand. I think that is about as exciting as watching paint dry. It's not my thing. But do I want my children and my grandchildren to have that ability? You bet I do. That was somebody did it. So.
Are we gonna be voting on this in March? Brooke Rhines?
Thank you.
Is there gonna be a special meeting?
Yeah, we petitioned Superior Court for permission to do a special town meeting, which is scheduled for November 28th, where there will be one article and one article only decided, and that's about this beach. But it'll be a legal town meeting. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Joan Harrington, Central Ossipee. Can you have a absentee ballot for this voting?
We cannot. We checked into it with the Secretary of State's office. We prefer to be able to, but because it is a traditional town meeting format, then there is not an allowable absentee ballot.
Okay, when did you make this public about this voting?
Excuse me?
When did you make it public about this voting? Because I have already plans to leave the state for a vacation, and I'm not going to be here on that day.
I don't know what to tell you. We were waiting, we had to wait for the permission of the Superior Court.
Okay, so my vote does not count?
I'm not saying that. The fact of the matter is that this is for the Secretary of State's office, that we cannot have an absentee ballot. So either you are here or you're not. I can't control it.
Okay, so who do I talk to make my vote count? Because I want my vote to count.
All the Secretary of State's office, I guess.
Okay.
But,
Ash Fishbone, Ossipee. Question for you, Rick. Volleyball court and other items that the town would need to appropriate or raise later. We've talked about to acquire this property is $1.2 million. What does it cost to bring it to that, removing all of the campground and everything over a 2 or 3 year process? What is the expense to the town to bring it up to the town beach that we're looking at?
to initially, virtually nothing. I mean, what work needs to be done will be done within our current budget. Now, if the town decides, after this committee comes back, and again, it would have to be appropriated by town meeting, if they decide they wanted to add things such as the volleyball court or a pavilion or whatever, then that issue would have to be voted on at future town meetings. For those campers who do stay during this transition period, we will continue to collect rent and that would come in as a revenue on the other side. What that figure actually is will depend on how many stay, and I don't know how to calculate it. I'm sorry.
I'd like to address Jonathan's question about the revenue. I think that, as Rick said, we have people going to White Lake, we have them going to the shore. Going on vacation is one thing, but we're trying to keep our people at home. And so I think you're going to see an increase in revenue for people that are spending it in other towns to get to the water. I think it's going to make a big difference here for people and families.
Denny?
Dennis Detter, Ossipee resident. There's been a lot of talk about a loss of revenue from 30 to 40 campsites. I'd like to remind everybody that Westwood Shores loan has just been approved to put another 150 to 200 campsites in. So there's going to be more than enough to make up for those 40 campsites.
John, Center Ossipee. There are a lot of things in this town, if I understand correctly, that are self-funded. Water and sewer. What's the idea of self-funding the beach? That you pay $10 a year for a sticker, not the dump sticker.
Yep.
And who use it, pay for it.
Yep. Did everybody hear that? You're talking about doing the user fee to support the beach and do it through that way. I won't say that we didn't discuss it, but it was quite brief. You already pay for a facility permit, a dump sticker. I think it's, was it $5 now for 2 years or $10 for 2 years? $10 for 2 years. That, philosophically, I think is a joke, to be honest with you. I mean, whether you take it out of your left-hand pocket or you take it out of your right-hand pocket, if you're a taxpayer, you're paying taxes. I never was a great fan of even charging $10 for the dump sticker. Quite frankly, I think if they cost us 25 cents, that's what they ought to cost you, because you're already paying. There are people, and a significant amount of people in the town of Ossipee. One of the things that was said several times is, well, why don't they just go to White Lake? That makes an awful lot of assumptions. One, that assumes that they have transportation to get to White Lake, and it also assumes that they have the money to pay to get into White Lake. We have a fairly decent-sized population of people in the town of Ossipee where $10 is a big deal. And for that reason, we intend to charge nothing for Ossipee residents to simply control the access to the same state. But I understand what you're saying. Somebody else? Sir?
Larry, Ossipee. A couple of questions, I'm a little foggy. The P&S said you couldn't displace the campus, so...
It does not say that.
Excuse me?
It does not say that.
I guess I don't know, what did it say?
I can get it out and read it to you specifically.
We have it right
What
here if you want to read it.
Sure. Go ahead and read it.
I'm sorry. My name's Maureen Doll. I'm a 5.5-month resident of Ossipee, 4 6.5 months of Comeau, Mass. And I've been coming up to Ossipee for 12 years, and I spend a lot of money in your town, and I used to love to come to the Iron Kettle for breakfast, and I used to love to come to the antique store, and I love to see downtown Ossipee come back to where it was when I started 15 years ago. About 12 to 15 years I've been coming with my family. So I'll read you the purchase and sales agreement, but then I also have my own questions.
Sure.
Okay? The purchaser will continue to allow campers to rent campsites on the property for at least the 2020 season. The rent charged by the seller during the 2017 season should not be increased before January 1st, 2017. 2021, excuse me.
So that means that the campus will stay until 2020?
Some of the campers can stay until 2020.
How does that affect your plans for parking?
Not at all. We will have the ability to move campers to address, in particular, the parking that is located here. Will it be exactly here orientated or here orientated? I don't know yet. But there is ample room, with the exception of the lakeside. Here. There is ample room for campers and parking on the site.
So the town would be responsible for moving those campers?
No, we will not.
So the campus would pay to have it?
Correct.
Right.
being evicted.
Well, I just don't understand, if a camper is in a spot where you're gonna have parking, how do you get them somewhere else?
You tell them they have to move.
And that's not contrary to the PNS?
No, it's not.
And we have a legal opinion on that?
We already have.
Good. The second question I have is Gretchen Road, you just mentioned crowning that, is that perfectly capable of passing 2 cars?
It is.
And the state agrees with that?
I don't care what the state is. It will become a town road.
Okay.
The state doesn't dictate what the width is on town road.
Okay.
You're saying Gretchen Road is able for 2 cars right now?
Yeah. It's supposed to be. I don't think so.
Yeah, one parked and one private.
Standing in the swamp.
I don't believe so either.
You had a question, Becky?
Yes, I have questions. You want $1.2 million for the town, to pay for the town beach. I love Ossipee. I'd love to see it economically developed up here again to what it once was. There isn't any businesses up here, maybe except for Mountain View Station or the meadery that I could come up to as a camper. So my question is, where would that $1.2 million be better spent? For the economic development of your town, which would attract more residents and raise your assessment, or on a town beach that you could use for 3 to 4 months a year?
Let me ask you
for
a question.
residents only.
Okay.
And also your schools. In 2015, you were last in your schools in ranking in the area in the rankings, in the test scores. So $1.2 million goes a long way for other services of your town.
Okay, let me, part of your statement was absolutely fine if you get the whole school thing, because the town taxes have zero to do with the school district. Zero. The fact is, what you'll see is the school portion of your tax rate goes up year after year after year after year. And we can debate all day long about the test scores and why they aren't what they are, but that has zero to do with the town budget. Zero. But let me ask you a question. You've been coming up here now for 15 years, correct? You love the lake.
Yes.
Love the area.
Yes, I do.
Would you agree that the other 4,400 people in this town ought to be able to access that lake?
Yes, I do,
But
they also have other options for water. I used to go to Winnipesaukee, but my family is here, so I come here.
But there was a donated beach.
And there was a donated beach.
which is not accurate.
One
Fact
says
is-
it's not.
Where's the cost?
Hold on a second, hold on. One at a time. You want to talk again, I'll let you in a second.
But what such site studies have been done to say that that's not adequate for you?
It's very simple. It will not hold enough cars. It's not just the amount of sand, it's the cars. Now, I want to back up just, hold on just a second. I want to back up to what I asked you and the reason I asked you. I understand why you don't want it to be Camp Sokokis. I do. But I do at least applaud. You were honest enough to say that the rest of us ought to have some access to the lake too. I get why you don't want
have
it.
access to the lake.
We do where?
You have Constitution Park.
Where you can't swim.
And I've also visited Duncan Lake, and you also have, it's the nice beach there, and if you put some money into Duncan Lake, you could also have a beautiful.
There's also a seasonal campsite down there that will probably more than welcome you if you think that that is equivalent to Ossipee Lake. You had a question? Okay. Yeah.
Lisa Hinckley, Center Ossipee resident. I raised 3 kids here. I have 7 grandkids here. And I hate to say, I go out of town, usually go to the beach. I've gone down to Duncan Lake, had to turn around, not enough parking. Anybody who's ever tried to bring an elderly person down those stairs to get to the beach, it's not adequate. Little kids, I mean, to have a place on the beach would be wonderful. I mean, I'm totally for this. I had kids through the rec department, but I also am an avid camper, and I can understand the love of your campground. I mean, I can totally understand that. And I'm happy for the people who will want to stay through the time that the town has agreed upon. But my question is where the proposed handicap parking would be from the road there to the beach. How far is that, do you know?
Right now, there's a, for lack of a better term, a driveway that goes in here and makes a loop.
So you could drop people off at the
Correct.
if they had walking trouble, or they need to be unloaded.
Correct, and that's why we've at least looked at preliminarily trying to put some handicapped access there to get them as close to the beach as we can. Whether or not that comes to pass, or if it still makes more sense because of the issues on Hudson Shore Road to put it here, I can't answer that yet. That's one of the things that I want the committee to really look at and to come back with some recommendations on.
It is expensive, but I do see this as being an asset to attract families here and other people here. Why would you want to buy a home here if there's no access to a great beach here? I mean, I lived on the Mill Pond, and I live above it now, and it's good for teenagers or people with no walking issues, but there's really no parking, one little spot there. The rest would have to park down Patty Acre Road. I mean, it's just not usable for the residents who live here. I mean, maybe one or two at a time, but this would be a wonderful opportunity.
Jim Rhines from White Mountain Survey and Engineering, and also a resident of Ossipee. And full disclosure, I helped put some of the plans together, and I'm being compensated by the town to, or my company is, to put some of these plans together for the meeting. But as I'm speaking now as a resident, I went down to the Duncan Lake Beach today, and it's 27 feet vertically above Duncan Lake. The quote-unquote handicap access to that is 18%. I measured with a clinometer. For anybody who has handicap issues, you'll know that a legal handicap access is 8 1/3%, and that's a ramp that must have a railing. So this is more than twice that size, twice that slope. It's very difficult. The parking up there is about 73 feet by 86 feet, and so you can maybe fit 15 cars there. The handicap access down to the actual beach portion is one gravel ramp that's it's a little more than 10%. Today, because of the storm, there were branches and everything else over it. The erosion that has taken place down there because of the slope of that beach is significant. And they put in stairs, and there's lots of rocks and trees around the picnic area, if you will. I mean, the town has done a lot to make that as good as it can be, but it is now having a father who walks with a walker, and he could maybe walk the length of this room with the walker, but otherwise he's in a wheelchair. I'm a lot more aware of handicap access. And this is a golden opportunity to provide access to the 6th largest lake in the state, named after this town. And I'm this year 60 years in this town. My aunt and uncle talk about from the 50s, when we tried to get another beach on Ossipee Lake off of Hudson Shore Road. And I see Rachel raising her hands because she remembers it. I don't. It was in the 50s, and I was born in the 50s. So I think that, as Rick has said, if this opportunity is gone, it will be lost forever. The other thing I think that Jim had mentioned, and I think it should be something to consider if we think that there are concerns about loss of taxes. I think that Duncan Lake, that property would be an ideal property for residents. And that would certainly generate revenue, both taxes and in the sale. And the other thing that I'll point out is that this property has sewer and water available. The Duncan Lake property, to my knowledge, does not. There are just so many assets. The direct access, as Rick has said, from Gretchen's Road. I measured today on Hodgson Shore Road. The travel width on that is 15 to 16 feet. There are two places at 60 Hodgson Shore Road and 76 Hodgson Shore Road
where it's 15 feet between trees, and they have been struck so many times by plows that they're half cut off. So, and having been out on Gretchen's Road, that is more than the 15 feet, and it also, the trees are way back away from it. So crowning and things like that would certainly address that, and it's a better access, and it keeps the traffic off of Hodgson Shore Road. And finally, I think it's been said, but I think that regardless of the vote, Diane and Bill certainly deserve an incredible thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
If I might, could I ask you, because I've been called on this once, you've walked this site with us, you have extensive wetlands knowledge, planning knowledge. Do you have an opinion on the adequacy of this piece of land and what it would pose for challenges?
Yeah, I actually did a layout. I think that it would be inadequate, and I think that it would be, though it was a phenomenal offer, I think that it would create a lot of problems for the Hodgson Shore community, if you will, because I could physically fit in that space where I've shown conceptually, I showed a volleyball court in here. In this area, I could conceptually fit 15 parking spaces, 2 of which were handicapped. But then, if this continued to be a campground, now you're getting out and you're walking down this area to get around here. There are a ton of docks there, and as we've heard one other person speak about, docks or swimmers and boats don't mix. And if this continued to be a campground, and this is all Ossipee had, you're going to have conflict here between boats and swimmers. You're going to have access problems coming in and out of Hodgson Shore Road, because there's still 4,500 residents that might want access to this beach. And so if this is all they've got, they're not going to know until they've gotten down here what there is, and then where are they going to park. Whereas in here, with it gated, you could stay, as the campground ceases to exist, you could, there's a ton of space up in here for, a bunch of options that simply don't exist. So I think that, if just being given this, I think would be, though an absolutely wonderful gift, it would be a gift that would create problems. And I'm not suggesting it, but if this lot were offered to be given, maybe that would be something different, but it's still, now you still have plenty, a lot more room for parking, but you can see here, this is 32 spaces. If you turn that this way, then now you're forcing parking down by the lake, you're into state permitting issues with lot coverage, and I think that, again, then this side would have boats, and that would be problematic. So I think that this is one of those options where it should be an all or nothing. If the town truly wants a beach, and at least since the 50s they've been saying that they do, and they want it to be on the lake that's named after the town, I think this is the kind of opportunity. I'm in the development business and have been for almost 40 years, and you don't see this kind of an opportunity. And that's why I think Diane and Bill deserve an inordinate amount of thanks.
All right, question. Now, this property is definitely going to be sold, correct? There's the owners will sell it. Okay. Now, nothing against the campers. I'm sorry. Ray Wright Center, Ossipee. Ray Wright, Ossipee Corner, Richard Road, 13. Okay.
Any of you that don't know me, I used to be the chairman of your library trustees for about 8 years. Okay? For you people, I understand the loss of your campgrounds. I really do. I appreciate it. But here's the reality. The land's gonna be sold. The next person that buys it, they may not want to keep campgrounds either. All right? At least, if we buy it, you've got till 2020 to make other arrangements. So you've got 3 years. If I were a land developer buying it, I'd buy it, I'd kick you out, I'd put a couple nice, real high-end homes in there, take the other 54 acres, put in a couple developments, make a couple million more.
Excuse me, rather than talking directly to
My
them,
point-
just
here's
if
my
you have a
point.
question or a statement, make it, let's move
My
on.
point is what I stated, is the land's gonna be sold. All right? The question is do the 4,500 people of this town want a lake on their lake in their town?
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Engage Senator Ossipee. I think you've done a great job in assessing this, and I agree with the whole valuation of the fact that if you buy this, you probably could sell it later. But I think the one thing that concerns me is that there is reliance on a number of departments within the town right now. And, you know, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know the town well enough, but I'm pretty sure that the police department, the maintenance department, and the highway department, and some of the other departments that are gonna really be maintaining this now, if I asked them, they would say that they're pretty much at 100% capacity.
No, I would disagree with that statement, and let me tell you why.
Okay.
Police department on
But
duty
can I finish my,
Okay.
so, I mean, I don't know what capacity they're at, but if they're not close to 100%, then all of a sudden I would start wondering about that. But I don't think this is probably the forum to get into that discussion. But if I did ask each of the departments, I would suggest that they would probably say they're close to 100% capacity. So if we plan this and we want to make this an asset for the town of Ossipee, which I think it could be, if we don't plan it well, it's not going to turn into a positive. It can turn into a negative. And I think the issues like maintenance and highways and such are very important, and particularly maintenance. And to understand that someone's going to stop by at the end of the day and make sure that the beach is clean, that could be. And maybe that'll work if you only have 10 people show up at the beach. But if we're only going to have 10 people at the beach, then, you know, it might not be as worthwhile as we said. So I think in the spirit of the project, it would be useful to at least try and understand what would be the amount of budgetary items that would be necessary to support this. Because it is a great asset, and again, I think you've done a good job to exploit the benefits of it, but I really believe it has to be maintained. And, you know, just to rely now that the current budget is going to maintain it seems a little challenging to me.
And I understand your question, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with you.
Okay.
You have police officers who are on duty 24 hours a day. Do they answer a lot of calls? Absolutely. But they are patrolling the town all day, every day. There's no reason whatsoever that they can't go through there and check that beach on a regular basis. No reason.
How do you base that? What do you base that on?
I mean, what do I base it
How
on?
do you know that they're not fully capacity right now, doing the jobs right now? They have time to go down to the beach and check it all out?
They absolutely have time. They are patrolling the town of
What are you
Ossipee
asking
all the
right
time.
now?
I don't need to ask you. I mean, that's a preposterous presumption that all of a sudden, if that were true, then there's all kinds of areas in town that were not patrolled. That's not accurate. They have the ability, as they have always. You might remember that I led that department for 17 years. I know what I'm talking about with this. They have the ability to patrol the entire town. It will simply be one of their regular stops on their regular patrol. As far as the maintenance goes, the reason that I can tell you that we can continue to maintain it is because we're maintaining all kinds of town property currently. When I talk about doing things within the current budget, it's because we've been doing things within the current budget. There's absolutely no reason to believe that that has to change. We have gone to our Public Works Director and our Highway Foreman to go down there and look at the road. They've been down and come back to us and told us that it doesn't need anything other than they would crown it with the grader. So we've done our homework, and what we're being told by the people who know what they're talking about is it doesn't need anything. We have a maintenance person who is on staff, who is already charged with cleaning up other town property. The little park with the gazebo up here, Duncan Lake Town Beach, Constitution Park, we have several recreational areas that are maintained every day, and there's no reason to believe that we can't do this the same way.
I think the only reason that, I would respectfully disagree with you though, is if you look at Long Sands Beach right now, where boaters come, and you look at the amount of waste that's left there on any given day, and that's waste that's not even really people driving in. There's a significant amount of waste that goes down the channel that comes in. Now, this might defray some of that because you can go somewhere else, but you're also creating an environment where you're anticipating 50 or so people to come every day. Constitution Park doesn't have 50 people there every day. There might be 2 or 4 people there.
But they couldn't park there, that's why.
No, I don't mean the beach. I'm talking about the park where the maintenance people come and play. There's 50 spaces that are up there, but there aren't 50 people that are just going to come to a field. And a lot of the places where current maintenance is being utilized, they're not getting the same draw of people that you're anticipating to get here. So if the beach is really going to be used, and you believe it's going to be used, I think you're relying a lot on self-cleaning of a beach. And if it's used a lot, or self-reliance on people taking everything out, I don't know if that's the history. I've never been to Duncan Beach, so I can't speak to it. And I've heard rumors, and I don't know how true they are, but I've heard rumors that Duncan Beach, even though it's a small beach, oftentimes was not as clean as people would like. And that was part of that maintenance that was being cleaned. And again, as I understand it, it only can accommodate 10 cars. So there's not a use there. So all I'm suggesting is that to really make this a better plan and a better program, it would be useful to really put the support, particularly for maintenance. I can't speak to highway, although plowing seems to be an ongoing thing. And I don't really know how you can just keep plowing. If people are maxed out plowing, then they're maxed out. But if they can be in 2 places at once, then that's fine.
They never max out though. This is the part that I don't want to spend a lot of time. But let's just say we add another town road. We're adding a half a mile of town road. That doesn't overtax your highway department. What it would do conceptually is it would delay that route the amount of time that it takes to do a half a mile. He does a route. So if you add a half a mile, it's going to take 6 minutes longer or whatever that number would be for him to complete his route. It doesn't cost you a cent more. You're simply expanding the route. Somebody else is over here next.
Mike Giammassi, Methuen, Mass. Resident of Camp Sokokis for 16 years. I just have a question. So, been paying taxes, property taxes for 16 years. Do I have a right to vote?
You do not.
Why?
Because you're not a resident. No different than any other item, any other issue. Take that up with somebody else. You only get to vote one place. Well,
yeah, Rob Andrea, Ossipee. I live down in the Duncan Lake area, and I just came for fact finding. I didn't plan on having input, but with the constant referral to Duncan Lake, I just feel compelled to input that. Number one, I live in the area. Number two, on Cleveland Beach Road of the town beach on Duncan Lake, I am a private owner of I'm a part owner of private beach. There's one other residence that I'm currently working on the place, and I've been friends with the previous owners and the new owners. So, in reference to the town maintenance, about 5 or 6 years ago, the went to town meeting. The previous owners moved to Florida. The town decided not to maintain it in the winter anymore. Since then, I really haven't seen any maintenance on that road since there has been no grading, there's potholes. The road is actually, go down there tomorrow and take a look. It's not in good shape. I plow that road. I have for the past 6 years since the town did not. Since the town voted not to plow it, I've been plowing it for the number one for my beach and number two for the private residents, and so it has been getting in bad condition. Also, I would like to see what the patrolling schedule would be for this. And I want to actually say that I came here that I am all for this beach. I think it's a good deal. I think we should buy it. I just have concerns on, just because I know the other town beach, that I would like to see what a patrolling schedule might be and a road maintenance schedule. And maybe they could be combined. But after Jim just talked, I have concerns on what's going to happen to Duncan Lake Beach, and that the taxpayers might want to be notified what future plans of Duncan Lake Beach might be.
We currently have no plans whatsoever to sell Duncan Lake Beach. None. Now, town meeting at some point could decide that they want to sell it, but we would never sell it without the town meeting voting to do so. The issue on the plowing, we did decide not to stop plowing it in the winter because it was of no use to us to plow down to Duncan Lake. It's not an ice fishing place or anything.
And that's fine, but the road hasn't been maintained since.
Peter.
Peter Wall, West Ossipee. For 21 years, I occupied the office across the parking lot as the recreation director for this town. Part of my responsibility was to maintain and upgrade all park facilities. I've been gone for over a year. I can't speak to what's gone on since August of 2016. For the 21 years previous to that, if you didn't like what I did, you should have said something. I was one person. For about a 6-year period, I had 2. In reference to Duncan Lake, in 2008, we still have a very serious erosion problem there. The problem is it's a big funnel. And no matter what you do, you're going to have erosion issues there. In 2008, I wrote a moose plate. Who has a moose plate, New Hampshire moose plate? Your money from that helped to pay for what we did at that point to try to mitigate the erosion issues at Duncan Lake. We increased and made that little picnic area. We did what we could at the time to make that a better, more aesthetically pleasing place for people to use. We worked with Greenmount Conservation to create some drainage areas off the areas there as well. We did what we could to make it the best we could. I was in constant contact with the police department, with the residents of the Adventure Campground and the neighbors right next door. They would call me almost daily, especially in the summer months, about issues at Duncan Lake. It was dirty, the porta potties hadn't been cleaned. I would contact the company to come and clean it. I know police was there as well at Constitution Park, the Mill Pond, the Main Street Park. They were there all the time on the regular routine patrols. I knew that. I knew what they did. I knew they did their job. I didn't have to worry about that. If I had an issue, I would call them and they would be right on it. Same with Public Works. The last summer that I worked in 2016, we had a serious storm like we had today, or yesterday. Within 24 hours, I had 2 phone calls from people who wanted to know if Duncan Lake was going to be fixed. And I said, yeah, after the roads are done. Well, what do you mean? I said, the roads take precedence. It'll get done, but it's going to take time. Okay? One of the reasons I retired. If the Congress continues to fund Land Water Conservation Fund grant, or LWCF grant, there are also federal monies that are allocated to the states for projects at Constitution Park. If it wasn't for LWCF, we would have no tennis courts there. The baseball field would not be there. The hiking trails would not be there. That all came from LWCF money. The last year I was on board with REC, I was on the committee statewide that would decide who got the LWCF money. The last year that I was here, I was on that committee. Abenaki ski area got, I forget how much, $200,000 or $300,000 to build a new lodge. I was part of the committee to help decide that, who got it. If Congress continues to fund it, that could be a funding source for any expansion, not just here, but anywhere. Some state grants, some local grants, it depends on what their stipulations are, what their requirements are, but that could be additional funding money to help pay for expansion, whether it's this beach or somewhere else in town. Part of the questions that I asked in my letter were the same questions that were asked of me every time I would sit before the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee when I wanted an assistant director, when I wanted to add the skate park, when I wanted to add a program or an activity. Who's going to manage it? Who's going to fund it? What's it going to cost? Those are all questions that I had to answer, and that's why I asked those questions in the letter. So is it rec, public works that will manage? I think it's a good idea. And those are just questions, but I just want to give mine. For 21 years of running the rec department, I know what took place when I was here in 21 years, as I was responsible for it. The last year, I can't tell you, because I wasn't here. But, so,
It would, as a recreational facility, it would come under the auspices of the recreation department. But as we do with a whole host of projects, they would work hand in hand with Public Works and the police department, the same way that you did when you were here. The issues at Duncan Lake Beach are very, very simple. Duncan Lake, as Jim pointed out earlier, is the parking area and the access to it is 26 feet above the lake. If somebody here can figure out how to stop making water run downhill, then we can solve the issues down there forever. It always has eroded, it always will erode. We have spent a considerable amount of money over the years trying to improve it to the best that we can. There are just flat limitations based on the site and the topography that we can't help.
just one more thing about maintenance issues. The maintenance people that were involved the last 2 years that I was here, they were there every day. Duncan Lake, Constitution Park, the Mill Pond, Main Street Park, so picking up trash, cleaning this up, cleaning that up, taking care of things. It is carry in, carry out, but most people carry in and leave in.
That's the unfortunate
People
truth.
don't read signs, trust me.
That's the unfortunate truth. Joe?
Joe Goss, West Ossipee. One of the things is there's been a lot of conversation about the beach down Constitution Park. What people don't know is I own the second house up from the beach at Constitution Park. I see the traffic that goes up and down Long Sands Road. I know none of you people that live on Hodgson Shore Road would ever want to see that traffic. That's why the road coming in Gretchen Road is a great idea. How many people here live on Hodgson Shore Road? Okay? Of those people that just raised their hands, how many of them have hot tempers? Come on, be truthful.
What was the question, please?
How many of them have relatively hot tempers? I said, how many of you have relatively hot tempers?
I think you made your point.
Okay? I'm going to tell you right now, the amount of traffic that goes up and down Long Sands Road on a summer weekend, he's saying there's 2 to 3 parking spots, they fit 20 in them. Okay? They're flying up and down that road. You'd be out there and you'd have your hands around their necks. Police department already know that my daughter has already done that.
So you think it's not gonna happen down the road?
It will not, because they'll be going in and off of Gretchen Road, not Hodgson Shore Road.
You actually think that's not gonna happen?
No, because you're gonna block it off.
You're gonna block off Hudson Shore Road?
The end of it going into that property.
It's a little plastic, but just open it up.
All your parking people coming in is gonna come in from Gretchen Road.
Hold on, no person to person, please. Let's try to get this moving.
What makes you think they're not gonna come down Hudson Shore Road?
All right, please.
Okay.
Doug Van Dyke. First of all, I've lived here most of my whole life, and I've always wondered why we didn't have a beach on Ossipee Lake. So, to that, I applaud that. The second part, I have 2 places on Hodgson Shore Road, and the fact there is that now I live on Route 16, and I've had the traffic enough. And we wanted some quiet, so you talked about the gate. I just wonder if you could explain to me how that might work, because Hodgson Shore Road can't handle much traffic at all.
And we agree. And as Jim pointed out, you went down and mentioned it, I didn't, but I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize how narrow it is. What currently occurs for the most part at Camp Sokokis is there is a gate. Now, we may improve the strength of the gate, but by gating this here, and posting that there's no parking coming in this way, I'm not saying there won't be a transition period where we have to train people, but the moment they drive down there and find out that they can't park, they'll begin and only use Gretchen Road to access. This is where your parking will be, and then they simply walk across the street to access this. We have no desire to increase the traffic on Hodgson Shore Road. It's not designed for it, it's too narrow, it's too windy, and that's precisely why we have proceeded with the plan that we are, which is to eliminate the traffic off on that road. Again, going back to this site, our fear with a small site is that the parking area is full, and then what happens when another 30 cars come down? This access is what makes this so valuable to the town, and the ability to have the parking on the non-water side of Hudson Shore. There's somebody over here. Sir?
My name's John Hood. I live in Groveland, Massachusetts. I have a piece on 195 Levitt Road. I've been here for 21 years. It's a beautiful place. I like it. There's all sorts of rumors that the tenants were going to pay for it. Then the slice of pizza was going to pay for it. Now it's going to be just taxes going to pay for it, right? Now I can't vote for it. So I'm paying for my property and I'm paying for that property. Is that double taxation?
You are not a resident here?
That's correct.
Okay. The fact of the matter is, and you do pick this up with me, but as a non-resident, you don't get to vote on it. No more than you get to vote on the police budget, or the school budget, or the highway budget, or any other.
And you say you're going to have a sticker for the vehicles, right? You ever go to the dump? You can't get by that young lady at the So you think these police officers are going to have to do the job that one lady can do? No way. And one other thing while I'm talking, please.
Sure.
I've been there for 21 years. I've been trying for 12. I have never, ever seen a police officer do a ride by my property.
Where do you live?
195 Levitt Road.
Okay. Police are here, and I'll guarantee you that you may not have seen them, but they've been by your place a good many times.
But I could just address that. John, we live on Ridge Road, and I had the same comment to Rick 20 years ago. I said, I'm paying taxes here, I don't see any police cars coming by, what the hell's going on, okay? And guess what? Now, I don't get out on the road that often because I'm on the golf course with Jonathan, all right? But I do see police patrolling our area at least a couple of times a day.
And I think I offered to blow the siren as we were going by. And so suggested we not
the
do
other
that.
side of the coin is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're not doing their job. They're just too thin to do the job 100%.
Right. Well, I guess.
Denny?
I've lived here all my life. I grew up here in the 50s, teenager. Used to go to Hudson Shore along with, God, some of the guys in this room are here, the girls. We went there and we had a great time. And for years we had the beach. The selectmen were blamed because we lost Hudson Shore. They had an opportunity to own the whole beach, if you all know where that is, Hudson Shore Beach. It was available to the town if they just allowed the Bamfords to stay there in their camp, no tax free. Well, they didn't want to lose that few $100s in taxes, okay? Which was probably, you know, short-sighted in their part, but they were looking today and not tomorrow. So we lost the beach, and for years all of us kids were pretty upset about it, and we knew who to blame, the selectmen. Well, this is on us now. We have an opportunity to have a beach on the lake. It's a generous offer. They've gone out of their way, I think, to do something for the town. I think that's why they did this. We need the beach. This town is growing. People have said, well, Duncan Lake, we can go there. Yeah, maybe this year, maybe next year. What's going to happen in 5, 10 years from now when the town increases another 1,000 people? Or some big businesses come in. We have a beach on Ossipee Lake. What do you do there when there's boats bumper to bumper all day long? It's dangerous. It's only going to get even more dangerous as time goes by. This is the last chance, I think, for the town of Ossipee to own the beach on Ossipee Lake. If we pass this up, our kids and our grandkids have nobody else to blame but us, not the selectmen. They're off the hook this time. It's all on us people.
Somebody else to get something new, we're just going to start to wrap this up. Sure.
Yeah,
Rick Knoll, still resident. Still a resident.
Even after tonight?
Even after tonight, still a resident. I want to just throw something out for you to entertain on behalf of possibly some of the people who are at Sokokis. Because I like the idea of the beach, I just hate the idea of running people out to do it. But it sounded like at the beginning of your presentation there was, for people who wanted to stay over the next 3 years, it sounded like you had an area on the opposite side of the road for some of the campers to stay. And it sounded like you still had enough parking area for the beach. So looking beyond 2020, could there be a possibility for those who wanted to stay beyond that, maybe you could set up some sort of lease agreement with them? So you're not a camp owner, they get to stay, at least some of them. They know they're not gonna have a boat, out on the shore, but maybe that's fine with them. And they're gonna have a beach. Is that something you might entertain?
The simple answer is that I believe all of that remains on the table. And this is where this committee that we're proposing to create is going to be so important. We're looking for them to come back to us and the voters with recommendations on how to best utilize that property. We, the three of us, have not cornered the market on ideas on this. There are a lot of people who have a lot of ideas, such as the one you just floated. The point that we made is trying to clarify this issue, because the concept of being in the campground and the boat business was just muddying the waters. By doing what we're doing, we're trying to boil this down to one simple, fundamental question, and that is, as Ossipee residents, as Ossipee voters, do you want access to that lake? If you do, this is your opportunity. And I quite frankly agree with the assessments, because I know, I've looked, we have been looking for more than a decade. There's nothing else out there. If you, as an Ossipee voter, want a beach, this is your opportunity, and there's not another one coming. Past that, I think that everything can be on the table, but this now becomes a fundamental question. Do you want a beach? If you do, belly up to the bar and appropriate the money and let us buy this and move on. One more time.
What is it gonna cost?
What is what going to cost?
What's the cost of that per thousand?
At $1.2 million, bonding $1 million results in an $85,000 per year bond payment, figuring worst case revenue, worst case interest rate rather. At $85,000 into our town value, that represents 15 cents per thousand of evaluation. Meaning if you had a $100,000 house, $15 of tax impact. Does that mean your taxes are going to go up 15 cents? Absolutely not. Because as the town's revenue goes up, if you look at, again, the town portion of your tax bill, it has gone down 4 years in a row. We've reduced it in the first 3 years, 34 cents a thousand. Much, more than double. We've reduced it, the town tax rate, in the last 3 years, more than double what this would ever potentially increase. One more. Sir.
I've got some questions. Gretchen Road, what is it used for now? You say there's a gate on it.
It's a private road to Camp Sokokis.
It's a private road. So the camp is on that side of Blackstone Shore Road?
On both sides.
It's on both sides.
Correct.
Now, if you're gonna relocate campers, is there plumbing there? Is there water, sewer and stuff so you can relocate them? Or is it all travel trailers or?
They're camps.
It's camps. Okay, so you can just move them to an existing place without reworking plumbing and sewer and all that stuff?
Correct.
And the boat docks, are they seasonal boat docks, easily removable? Or?
Yes.
Okay, so those can go, and that gate, when it's closed, I know for an example, in Wolfboro, there was one particular person who got all over everything for ADA compliant. Are you gonna have issues with that bathhouse being ADA compliant and that gate being in the way? And when that happens, it costs a bunch of money.
I do not anticipate that being an issue. If it were, it would simply be a case of locating a handicap accessible porta potty on that side of the road.
And so you can get by with porta.
The first quarter of that Gresham Road bridge. What name? Both sides?
Excuse me?
The first quarter of Gresham Road coming into the front.
The first quarter here?
Yeah, all that land there down to the trailers. Is that all wetlands over
Oh,
there?
yeah. Somebody else? If not, thank you all for coming out. The Selectmen media every Monday night. If you come up with a new question, by all means, please ask.